Over the years, public perception of the destructive capacity of smoking has increased significantly, but this hasn't stopped it from still being one of the leading causes of death in the U.S. today. As a result, a number of organizations have sought to change public perception of smoking by running anti-smoking campaigns. This all began in the 1960s with the Federal Cigarette Labeling and Advertising Act, which basically placed limitations on the ways that cigarettes could be marketed. And so now we know that any cigarette package is going to have a very clear warning label placed on it that details all the possible side effects of smoking. And so while this was effective, it definitely didn't eradicate the problem. And so now over the years, we've seen more intense campaigns being run. So in recent decades, we have seen public service announcements and ads from private organizations that have sought to change public perception of smoking from something that is cool or rebellious to something unappealing and socially unacceptable. And now we even see more intense and graphic images from the CDC that depict all of the physical side effects of smoking in detail. And so we can only hope that as we step into this area of fear-based marketing, that this will actually have a lasting impact on our society. So first we need to look at what exactly a fear appeal entails. Like the name says, these kinds of marketing campaigns will focus on fear and the avoidance of any negative outcomes. And so obviously we see this a lot in day-to-day life. We'll see public service announcements asking you to not text or drive or to wear your seatbelts in order to avoid an unfortunate accident. And on a lighter note, we see marketing campaigns asking you to wear their brand of deodorant so that way you can avoid the social embarrassment of sweating through your shirt. So obviously these have positive impacts if you can scare consumers straight and encourage healthier lifestyles. That is definitely a benefit to fear-based campaigns, but on occasion these campaigns will actually have the reverse effect. If the campaign focuses too much on all of the horrifying qualities of whatever you are doing, whether it's smoking or something else, if it focuses so much on that fear that consumers become too terrified to even think about it, they will push it from their minds, and they may even disregard and come up with counter arguments to it, so that way they can reconcile their beliefs with their actions. And so studies have shown that the best kind of fear campaign is one that displays a moderate but reversible threat, which basically shows that while smoking is a very bad thing and it definitely has horrible consequences, it's not a hopeless situation and you can get help and you can change your behavior. So this could be done by placing a quit smoking hotline at the end of your public service announcements or at the end of your advertising. And so another concept that marketers need to be aware of when using this kind of advertising is the concept of habituation. And this is basically the process of consumers viewing a stimulus, whether it's an advertisement or something else, and paying attention to it the first time, but over time becoming desensitized to it and not noticing it, and it not having any lasting impact on their behavior. And so an example of this would be obviously that we see these CDC ads that are very vivid and very graphic, and we're shocked by them, and we think about them throughout the day, but the more often we see them, the less often we really pay attention to them and let that fear sink in, and so it may not actually have much of a lasting impact at all. And so one more concept that marketers need to be aware of is the idea that fear-based appeals are going to impact different personalities differently. And so consumers can really be split into two different groups. One of them is prevention-focused and one of them is promotion-focused. So these prevention-focused consumers are going to be very risk-averse. They're going to be very focused on all of the possible negative outcomes that their actions might have, and on how to avoid those outcomes. So these are people who, when they go grocery shopping, they buy health food and vitamins and all of these things very specifically in order to avoid getting sick and having any health complications. And so one example of advertising that we see quite a bit that appeals to these kind of consumers are those car commercials that are focused on very humble, safe, family-friendly cars. And so they tap into consumers' fear about sending their children out in an unsafe car, and so they're really going to emphasize safety and reliability and that family-oriented mindset. And then promotion-focused consumers, on the other hand, are people who are less risk-averse and much more focused on personal achievement and reaching their goals and living life to the fullest. And so they may disregard some of the negative consequences of their actions if they are just trying to enjoy life. And so these consumers, when they go grocery shopping, if they're going to buy healthy food and vitamins and supplements, they're doing that much less out of a desire to avoid being sick and much more out of a desire to achieve their fitness goals or get to a higher quality of living. And so following that same car example from before, car commercials that are really going to appeal to these consumers will be ones for luxury vehicles that have taglines like "You've earned this" and "Enjoy life," and "The only way to drive is fast and glamorous." So marketers need to be really aware of which side of the consumers they are impacting by their messages and on how they can reach both sides. So to further illustrate this point, I will outline 2 potential advertising taglines for an organization like World Vision. World Vision is a Christian evangelical organization that works around the world to solve a number of issues, including hunger and poverty, a lack of education and resources, and they have you sponsor children. And so if they were going to ask for donations or child sponsorship from prevention-focused consumers, they would want to really emphasize how scary the world can be and how bad things are for other people. And so they may show pictures of sad children in war-torn countries, or they may describe these endless cycles of poverty and violence. And so they would use all of these more fearful of these negative outcomes. They would use those kinds of appeals to reach prevention-focused consumers. And so an advertising tagline that would work really well for them might be, "Without your help, a child may go hungry this week." And so this kind of advertising would really help these prevention-focused consumers to remember how they try to avoid negative outcomes, and now they want to help others avoid these negative outcomes as well. And so it would have to be a very different strategy if you were trying to target promotion-focused consumers. They very well might get overwhelmed by all of that negativity, and they would need a much more positive goal that they could shoot for. And so instead of all of these sad images, you may tell a story of a child whose life was dramatically changed after they were sponsored by someone like you, and really show how positive their life can be with a little bit of help. And so a tagline that might be used for this kind of consumer would be, "For just a small monthly sum, you can help a child live their dream." And so while the message of both of these taglines is essentially the same, that this child is at risk, but with your financial help they don't have to be, the way they are framed is very important depending on which consumer you are trying to focus on. And so World Vision would probably do best to use a combination of these ads, so that way they could reach both their prevention-focused audience and their promotion-focused audience. So in conclusion, smoking has definitely been a problem in our society for a long time, and these different ad campaigns, from changing public perception of smoking to educating people on all of the negative consequences to trying to scare consumers straight, these have all had varying levels of effectiveness. And in order to move forward and to really continue to have an impact, any anti-smoking campaigns are going to have to be very aware of the role of habituation in viewing these ads, and the style of the ad and which kinds are more effective, and the personalities of the consumers that they are trying to persuade. And so if marketers can be aware of every effect that they are having on consumers, they can be more sure that they're going to make a lasting impact on society when it comes to smoking.